I know you feel it, the burning in your spirit, welling deep inside. You got a beast inside. I know it's hard to tame it, it's harder to explain it. Can't even get a picture, no matter how you frame it. There's so much pressure with all these external stresses, and they try to test you. Gotta push them through the feeling, even though your mind is reeling. The power's deep inside and leads you if you were willing. Got the power. Can you feel the power? This is the hour to release your power. Got the power.
Hello, and welcome to another episode, the last episode for season 1 of the Power Shut Up podcast. We have had a great year, some great guests, and we're going to keep this going by ending this with a great conversation with some men. You all have seen men on the show. We've had men on the show for years, but this is actually dedicated to their issues, their concerns, what they want to talk about. And I think I want to start a series of these. And I think that the two guests I have tonight are the perfect gentlemen to kick this off and get the conversation going. Because one thing, they keep it real. They're going to tell you, they're not scared to talk about it. And there's a couple things we want to ask, and they're going to give us the truth, real talk, whether we want it or not. And that's how I like to have conversations. Tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. But before we get started, I wanted to say happy birthday to those who are celebrating a birthday. Y'all know that I have any reason works for celebrating Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, birthday, whatever. So happy birthday to you. Happy anniversary. To those who are celebrating love, I am one of them mushy gushy kind of people. So anytime you want to celebrate love, I'm here for it. So happy anniversary. And congratulations to anybody who has bought a new home, started a new class. For some of you all, you may not know, this has been a wonderful month for me. On June 1st, I received my honorary doctorate in humanities, and I'm really excited about it. So I added 2 letters to my name, doctor. But I'm ready to get to work. I have some plans on my publishing company and the podcast for next season. So I'm not sleeping too much with that. I'm ready to roll. I'm not going to let no grass grow underneath my feet. But congratulations to everybody who's done something to step outside of their comfort zone. You did it. Congratulations. Keep going. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about other things because an hour is not going to be enough time for us to start to talk about the men in our lives and our, whether it's friends, your spouses, your cousins, your grandfathers, whoever it is. We want to talk and hear from the men about things that concern them, things that they want to talk about. And I have a few questions for them I might throw in there, but I first wanted to let you all know who we have with us. So we have, you see Bruce Bradford, but I call him Dad, Coach. He is actually been in my life since high school. True supporter. Some of my Warrior fam may be on here, so you know who he is. He's dad to you too. But I welcome you as always. And we also have Tyrone DuBose, who has been on Luncheon with Lisa. I think he's been on the Power Shut. I'm not sure, but he's been here many times. He schooled us on the history of music. He's representing in Hollywood. So he's on the West Coast. We on the East Coast. So we done just blended. It's all family up in here. But I thought what might be a good idea is I want to run a promo clip for Tyrone, and then we have a little snippet for Coach Dad that we're going to run to let you all know how they roll, and then we're going to get into a conversation. So let's go on and run the promo for Tyrone, and then for for Dad. Let's go.
From the #1 book from Amazon, Tyrone DuBose.
If I made it, then I was going to go for my dream. And I just want to tell you.
When I was growing up, when I had an afro,
more than you talk. And you will find out that, you know, I've heard the term, which is a legitimate term, to stop bullshitting people. That means just come real. Yeah. So you KIR, keep it real. That's what I would tell students, and then I would do this. But the more you listen, the more you learn. And I like what you said, brother, when you were talking about dependency, because that's the antecedent or a trigger to what is security. And see, when people get successful in any one thing, they tend to stay in that. It becomes habitual. You know, so if I go out here and I've never hustled, but if I started hustling and I start making $40,000 a week, it's going to be hard for me just to stop when I start taking care of my family and I haven't got caught. You follow what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's a habit. It's a dependency deprivation that people become like that. It's historically, we have been.
So that's a little snippet of who we have here. It is only a small snippet of the power that is in this room tonight, the knowledge that is in this room tonight, but we're going to get right into it. So I want to thank them for being here. I am honored that they would come for the last show. I think this is the best way to end the season. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of those conversations. I think, Coach Dad, when you were talking to that young group of men, that was actually in response to, we put together a group, and I wanted to share. Tyrone and I have actually been co-authors on a book, and that's where we actually met each other. And this was for, once I started my publishing company, one of my clients wanted to do some research, and it had to do with dads and fathers and sons. And so I invited some men out. Prince DeJour from 102.3 came out and hosted it for me. And they had some great conversation, and the women just kind of watched and let them do their thing. And they had some great conversation from young people. There were grandchildren that you saw in there. So generations. And it was some great real talk conversation. And Tyrone, I know that you've done some things with, I think, college students and youth as well. So you all are very familiar with how to pour back into the young people. But I wanted to ask you, and we're going to let it flow, but I know there are a lot of myths about what men don't like to do. They're not comfortable speaking. I don't get that from you all. So I kind of wanted to kind of dispel some of those myths, and let's talk about it. What are men's fears? What do they like to talk about? And I will kind of preface this by saying this month is actually Men's Health Month. So that's a big topic. Black Men's Appreciation Month. So perfect timing. And also Black Music Month, which actually is also known as African American Music Appreciation Month, was initiated back in 1979 with Jimmy Carter, as a matter of fact. So there's a lot going on in June, and I think we never hear about that. And Father's Day. So we're going to say Happy Father's Day to everybody before we leave here. But there's a lot going on centered around men that we never talk about. And I'm going to take this out of the month of June, and we're going to start talking about it every month. But for tonight, I wanted you all to share some things that you feel like men want to talk about, but never get the opportunity to talk about. And we can start with you, Coach Dad.
Okay, good evening, and thank you, Dr. Washington. First, I give honor and glory to my Father and Savior, Jesus Christ, because without him, I would not have the auditory skills that I'm going to try to use tonight. And I want to be able to reach other people as I have been reached by people that are surrounded and formulated my life. Therefore, health is my wealth, and health should be the wealth of all men. You use the word, and Lisa, you know, back in H.D. Woodson, as a high school teacher, I taught aquatic classes or swimming classes to others. And the least word that I would allow would be the word fear. And I get so concerned about men who have that word so prevalent inside of their bodies. And it's something that we have to be very concerned about, because there's truth in lending. You need to lend yourself to other people, and you need to talk. What I like about this format that you have tonight, and I told Tyrone, I'm going to follow his lead because he's well-versed on leading. I'm well-versed on following. I'm well-versed on teaching, and I'm well-versed on being community. My favorite use of the word we is third person plural. It's about others. It's not just about me or anything, but go back to your question and without using that word, and it's okay. But men need to learn to talk. They need to exhibit the ability to release things that are tied up in their bodies. And I use a format such as this to have the opportunity to tell anyone and everyone the trials, the tribulations, and the concerns that I have, and the concerns equaling fear. So I'm mostly, because my first degree was in health and physical education, and that's what I'm mostly concerned about. Mm-hmm. Men's health is so critical, and we have words that are deterrents to talking about our health. And that's a word like macho, manhood, I can do it. You've got to be kidding me. You don't know the internal anatomy of the structure what it has. And I'm going to share with you very briefly, if I'm not going too long to start off. But I'm going to say this to start off. I'm a proud 3-year prostate cancer survivor. Very few people don't know that, but I use any type of opportunity to do it. The reason I am that, because I went for a well man's physical, and I found out everything was there. My doctor said, well, Bruce, everything looks good, but your PSA is a little high. And then we found out that I did have prostate cancer. Not only did I have it, I could have had it for 2 or 3 years because it was slow developing in very infancy. So I want, and women most especially, because you are our helpmeets, you are our supporters. You should know, you should be able to visually see a change in our demeanor. And it could be because of health. And if we walk around like I'm tough and I'm rough and I can handle this, no, you really cannot. You are not the creator of your own body. So I'm going to put a pin in that right there, because I don't want to talk too long, but I'm going to come back to that. That's my intro. And then we'll get follow up, because I can see Tyrone has something to add to that. And I will come back to the ending of that later on. But I am what men should be, a survivor. We're going to talk about the relay, the baton. I did that because I'm passing the baton now to Tyrone to pick up on that. And he's going to pass it to other men that's going to go in. By the end of this session, some men on this line are going to go get a checkup.
Yes.
Because all I did, thinking I was all that in a bag of chips in terms of health.
I love it. That's perfect. I love it. Tyrone, I'm passing the baton.
Well, let me begin, first of all, by saying that I am so grateful. First of all, let me congratulate you on your doctorate. Well deserved. The second thing is I'm honored to be on as well, particularly with this distinguished man who not only spoke in a way that was, sincere and real, but it touched me as well, because like you, I'm a cancer survivor as well, of colon cancer. And I wasn't aware of it as well. But the one thing I thought about as you were talking, and it's almost basically saying the same thing, it's vulnerability. Mm-hmm. Men don't feel a sense of being vulnerable. And as he mentioned, we are told that we need to be tough. It's what we're taught. We're supposed to be tough and suck it up and not pretend as though we're allowed to have any feeling at all other than being a protector of some sort. But we need to be able to feel a sense of vulnerability to feel that we're protected as well, not just in our physical aspect, but what our feelings are, a sense of pride, dignity, and respect. These are all the things in which we're missing. And being able also to be transparent and not feel a sense of being judged. It's one of the things that I have struggled with for a long time before I became, and even now, even as a public figure, a lot of times the things in which I deal with requires me to have to sometimes be careful about the things in which I say. And that's kind of tough for me sometimes, but it is a necessary aspect of the work in which I do. So yeah, as he said, I think it's so important of being able to have the opportunity to be vulnerable and be able to be real, not only with others, but with ourselves. And I think that was the biggest struggle I had in my life, being real with me.
Right. And I love the way you all have kicked this off. And Coach, I want to go back to what you were talking about, because one of the questions that I wanted to ask you all was about, because I feel like when we have these conversations, it takes a long time for us to get to something that's productive or that we can take with us and grow to the next level. So we just get stuck in the conversation. So I do want to take this into as well, once you start, is to talk about how we can, because I think about this all the time when I'm in conversations with my husband about, you know, things that he does. We found out he had AFib and it was accidental, and he was busy trying to still cut the grass and couldn't breathe, and, you know, and I had to kind of take over. But it's kind of like, what is going on here? Like, you tell me what's going on. If you communicate it to me, I can help you. But he's busy trying to keep things going, and don't worry about me. But how can we, is going to be my question. How can we, whether it's your children, your wives, your friends, support you in these efforts? Like, Tyrone, what you just shared, and thank you for being so real about it. But I'm always looking for ways that we can help support you all to get you more open. I did do some crazy stuff with my husband, like planning my appointments the same day as his to make sure he would go. Being creative with it. We can laugh about it now, but that's something I want to see if we can talk about as well. But Dad, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Well, hats off to you for being the helpmeet that you are to your husband, to listen and to have conversations. When, you know, a person's in a kayak, that's a one-man boat. But you're on a cruise ship in this world. There are lots of problems that people don't identify. You can't judge a book by its cover. You know, I've read your book, Shut Up, The Power of Shut Up, but I didn't know exactly what it was going to be like until I read it. And in there, you indicated things that you had to overcome. Mm-hmm. And see, those who have life is a bowl of cherries or something, something's wrong. Get away from me, because one of us is going to be struck by lightning, not me. You know, you have problems, you have concerns, but you do need someone to talk to. In a biblical study session I had about several months ago, a guy's older teacher said men need to talk to men, and they also need to talk to women. We need to talk to each other. You see, when I started revealing a health concern that I have, then Tyrone revealed the same. Then you brought it in that your husband has had, and there are others who are sitting around in denial or in that word fear. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that we have to cancel that out. I'm just have I know the connotation of the word and the denotation of it. One of it frightens someone, and one of it really is real. It's just something that they cannot do. But let's go anatomically. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You got to listen 2 times more than you talk sometimes. And sometimes, like I said, that little disease I made up, RMD, running mouth disease, I suffered from it myself. But I have worked in H.D. Woodson as well, you know, in the inner city schools. I was surrounded by housing projects where kids did not have anyone to talk to or anyone to listen to them. Right. You know, I pity... I shouldn't say that word. I am sorry about the children who can come home and no one hugs them and say, how was your day? What did you learn? And it's the same thing spouses have to do. Brothers and sisters have to do the same thing. We need to talk and communicate, because we feel that we have internally been empowered to handle it ourselves. Mm. Okay. And that's not the case all the time. Yes, there are some that have little or no choice. They don't have any other resources to expound upon, you know, their concerns. Okay.
Yep.
So I look at it like that. Communication is the key word that I want to get in here. When we communicate and not be isolated, no man is an island. Don't try to do it by yourself.
That's right.
Okay. My wife of 52 years was with me through the whole time that I was going through that. And you need the support. My children gave me the blues because they said, Dad, you can't do this and don't tell anybody. But I knew what level it was. It was infancy. I was at the very low level to the point that I had to move up. And it's not to take the focus just off of me. When I say I'm talking about men, period. Men, right. If they're at the sound of my voice, they're someone that is infected with something and don't know. Find out. Go and listen to someone that has professionally prepared themselves to give you the answer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tyrone, I'm gonna pass it back to you, because I love the fact that you are pushing men to, because it's funny, every time I talked about the power shut up, especially if I suggested it to a man, a lot of times they would say, "Oh yeah, I need to get this book to my wife," and it was funny because even though the book is a self check, so I was talking to me, teaching myself to shut my mouth, but at the same time, there's all forms of communication. So it taught me and my husband, because he was the one that was silent, but he also had to understand that once I stopped talking so much, that meant he had to talk a little more, and he was willing to when I just got quiet, so that we could start to hear each other. Because I think that there's all of these stereotypes from growing up, and you hear about men don't communicate, and it's true that men actually use less words than women, but that doesn't mean that the message is any different. It's just that you all don't use as many words to talk about it. We're going to give you the color, the smell, and all of that. You all are not really interested in that, but we can still communicate and get along beautifully. But thank you so much for being so open. And you all really can speak from a perspective of, I've gone through this and I've survived this. This is what I had to do, and this is what's needed to be done. So Tyrone.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the things that I learned once I found out that I had cancer is that I recognized that if I survived, I was going to make this the second half of my life. And that required me to be real with myself, which I think I struggled with the most, because that would require honesty that I really wasn't willing to face of my own. And I know I couldn't be alone, because I mean, the truth of the matter is, and look, I mean, being well known and being on television makes it all great, but the truth of the matter is, I really wasn't a great dad. I had to figure out a lot. I had to help in some kind of way, shape, or form of being real with somehow or another trying to make things right. If it was allowed, I had to, humble myself to some degree. I had to think about being less, being more. The less I said, the more powerful I became, because then at that point, it gave me the power to shut up and listen, because I needed to do the same. And that was something that I struggled with, like many other things. And so once I got some sense of my act together at that point, I just recognized that that this dream, or whatever I was going to be, you can't have a full-time dream and put in part-time work. And so, but it also required me of being able to be okay being normal, because there's this sense of feeling like we've got to be something more than what we really are, a sense of bravado. And we see on Facebook people doing a whole lot of things to get a whole lot of likes, but not a whole lot of love. And I think that's what
I agree. I think that it's one thing I heard, especially in those TikTok streets, that I think sometimes the guys would talk about the pressures of this being the protector and the holding everybody up, and I think that there's pressure that comes with that anger. So you hear it come out very, they're upset, they're angry, they feel unappreciated. But I get it, because there is a certain pressure, especially if you put all of that on yourself, whether you've had the conversation or not. I will shout out one of my friends, Special, who has a show that she does out on TikTok. And we talked about this last night, where we want to know from the men, did you even ask? Because I remember my husband having that pressure. He wanted to take care of everything and don't worry about it. But he never asked me if that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want him to work all the time. I want you to come home. So I don't need that extra if I can have you home and healthy. But it's a matter of, like you said, the communication to find out what is it that she really wants, or they really want, because you might be working yourself that way just because you think that's what you're supposed to do.
One of the things that I learned, Lisa, and is that I had to really, I heard somebody one day say, I'm a nurturer. And I don't know why, that helped me a great deal, because people who are nurturers, the softer they talk, the louder I hear them, because I'm willing to hear someone who isn't, we're not in competition. And it reminded me of my grandmother as a kid. I used to always ask her, why is it that her and my grandfather always went for a walk all the time? Or what, better yet, I said, why is it that you never argue in the house? And she said, it's because, don't you notice that we walk all the time? And she said, because my home is a home of peace. She said, so there's no arguing in this house. So we walk. And I had to get back to some sense of basic. A lot of times it's the little things you hear as you were younger that somehow or another isn't applied until there's an issue of some sort when it gets to become, when you're older, that you recognize that those gems that you hear from your childhood are those things that will get you through adulthood.
Yeah, and I would jump in on that too, because, you know, I heard this saying that the only thing permanent in this world is change, and change is something that's a dynamic that we can't control. You know, age appropriately, I grew up under different circumstances than what children are growing up today, and men's roles today are different from what they were a long time ago. You know, today children talk back to their parents as if it's a conversation. If you look at the movie Fences, I don't know if you've seen that old play, you know, and the dad is telling him, that's not how it works, boy. You listen, you in my house. You know, we don't have that authoritative, dictatorial, hegemonic authority in the home like that. Is it needed? It depends on what the child has been brought up in, what environment he or she has been brought up in. You know, do you have to scream and holler? I don't think I have to scream and holler at my grown children. I don't think I did that with you, Lisa, and the students. But I'm blessed to have been directed. And I saw on Facebook, I hope I get it right, Denzel Washington said something like, to have a goal is, to have dreams is nothing but, without a goal, it's still a dream. And see, when we bring children in this world, and we give them the opportunity to go to school, to go to church, to play athletic sports and everything. But it's got to have something where the end of the rainbow is that pot of gold, and that is happiness, that's success. And that's why I embark upon the fact that health is so important, because there are many people, I'm sure, that are financially well off, but they're not healthy, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Financially, fine. That's just going to be an inheritance for someone when you're called home. And we got to think about those kinds of things. Men need to start focusing on today is in existence now, and tomorrow is not promised. That doesn't mean that you should be so afraid that you can't do anything. And that's why I hesitate to say that word about fear, because fear is a negative hindrance to someone's mobility to move forward.
I like that.
About that, okay?
Yeah, I like that. I want to ask you all, because I love where you are with this, but I do know that there's generation gaps, and when I hear the young men talk, sometimes I'm frustrated, because they're very different. I know the world is different, but on some level, I feel like if they would just listen to the older generations and take from it, and, you know, vice versa, then we can all figure this out. But it's almost like there's this block. So they figure we don't know what we're talking about because the world ain't what it used to be. So go on somewhere. And then the young people think, you know, that they have the answers now, and you all just aren't listening. Because I'm gonna be honest, when you said something about yellers, I was a yeller. And it was because as a mom and a single mom at one point, I felt like when I'm starting off at 2, they're not listening to me, they're not doing. So let me just save some time and go on to 10 or 15. But when I got married, my husband was like, what is the yelling about? Because he wasn't accustomed to that. And me as a single mom, and I think a lot of times we're not kind of trying to understand why somebody is communicating the way they are. And I think mine came from not being heard. So I'm going to get louder. And it seems like that the louder you are, the more that people listen to you. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're respecting the conversation. It's just kind of, you know, it's almost bullying to some extent. I know my kids are grown now, but when I say something about I was a yeller, they're like, oh, she gets it now, because they're all grown. But I admit and said to them, that wasn't the best way to communicate with you all. But it could have had a negative impact on their lives. I mean, thank goodness it did not, and they get it. But I think some of that came from my husband just explaining that you don't have to yell it to say it. But I was always fearful, as you said, I was fearful that you're not going to hear me. So when I said it and I was calm, y'all act like I ain't say nothing and kept doing what you were doing. So I'm thinking that I'm disciplining or letting you know, don't play with me. But I did learn that, you know, it's tone and the way you say things and when you say them. And I was speaking from anger. And that's what kind of messed me up. A lot of times, I think sometimes when we're angry, that's when we decide to say things out of our mouths. And sometimes you got to just wait a minute and get yourself together so that that's not what's coming out. Because that's what the yelling really was all about. I'm angry because y'all are blowing me off. So I'm hollering at you. But I love what you all are sharing. Tyrone, I wanted to pass it to you about, you know, because I wanted to actually throw out some myths and just ask you kind of true or false. After you speak, I had some things I wanted to ask you and say, is this really true about men versus women? But we'll talk about that. But yeah, tell me, you know, what advice would you give young people, young men who are coming up that are struggling with being heard and understood?
I think part of it is twofold. We're asking for people to think like us. And so we have to begin a conversation with believing that they don't see what we see. I remember when I was playing baseball, I was in the playoffs and I had hurt myself really bad, but I didn't tell anybody that I had hurt myself because I wanted to win a championship. And I went out there and I played myself to death trying to win, and we didn't. And I saw the lackadaisical attitude that everyone else had when they were playing. And I found myself getting upset. And then I realized, what am I doing? It was an epiphany for me. I realized, what am I doing? I'm mad. Why am I mad at these people? Because they can't see what I see. It's not fair for me to think that they see what I see. It's not right. They don't want what I want. So you can't do what I do.
Right.
So I had to learn. So I remember them saying, well, Tyrone, we don't think you're the right person to coach this team. But it was an epiphany for me because I realized I needed to find 16 other people who thought like I did. And then I won the championship the next year. So, but it's almost the same thing with people in general. We're asking for them to see what we see, but we can't see what they see until we understand why they are the way they are. We're all different in some capacity. And I don't know if it's more than advice, but recognizing that everyone isn't the same. We don't all see the same thing all the time. And I had to learn that it was okay for people to be different.
Yes.
And once I started there, the process was being able to acknowledge that we weren't all the same. So we're not all the same. Them being able to recognize that I acknowledge who they are in this moment allows me to give a different perspective of telling them perhaps there's a different or better way. Being successful for me in this regard didn't come without sacrifices, and being okay with showing people that people see the glory, but they really need to understand the story. And that's what I had to learn.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Dad, did you have anything to add to that? And then I got a couple of questions to see if we really on point with what men think.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep you on point because, you know, we were first. Adam was first. We have to do that, okay? That's a joke. But I wanted to go back to your little anger issue like that. I used to tell people when you put a D in front of the word anger, what do you have? You have danger. And that's why you have spells danger, and that's what happens. You have to be concerned about that. And what Tyrone was saying was, I hope it was supporting my little cliche that the only thing permanent in this world is change. You know, while I'm on this right now, my phone keeps ringing. I don't know how to cut it off. People with technology skills better than mine can do. I just muted myself so you wouldn't hear the phone ringing. I'm like, is Halle Berry or Beyonce calling me now? I told them that I was busy. The point back to where
hold up, they were calling me first. I thought I'm in Hollywood. I thought they were calling me.
Right there. You probably going over her house as far as I know.
They don't want me. They don't want me.
But you know, what you heard back in one of my favorite cliches is KRR is to keep it real. We have to do that. But we have to realize we don't know everything. And it's not received the way we dish it out. Yes. I've worked with special needs children. I've worked with children that are valedictorians in all walks of life. But I don't know that until they express themselves to me and I have an identification with them. You know, to be quiet, it could be misconstrued as being weak. It is not. It means that they are absorbing. They listen, and they don't have to listen with excitability. You know, you see people in church jumping and screaming and like this and like this, and I think we have to sit down so I can hear. But that's the way I learn.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have to have in our minds, we do not know everything, but we can share most everything. Now, there are some times when you have the house rule and you have to lay it down. There are times when we as men have to listen to the wife, the spouse, our elder daughter, or anyone, or the youngest child, because out of the mouth of babes, they have common sense and they understand that we don't understand them. And in my last position in the charter school, well, I'm this June 30th, I will be 7 years completely 100% retired, and I taught 45 years. Okay.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's a blessing. And
Absolutely.
I mean, to have that and to live, there are many people that they retire and within 2 years they have a heart attack.
That's
you know,
right.
I've had 7 years of blessing, and I use a platform like this to explain how I got through. And I got through that by not knowing everything myself, by listening to other people, communicating, meeting people at least halfway, and then doing this. I got trained as a mediator, and as a mediator, I learned that there are disputants, and you cannot pick on one person. You let them solve their problems. So we have to start thinking about that. As men, we're not the problem solver. We are the referee, and 2 boxes are in there. You don't win it just unless you cheat. You know, you can disqualify a person, but that's not it. Now, and last but not least, because Lisa, you sure bring the best out of me. I shared this with you. You know, you have known me for many years, but you couldn't look at me and tell that my grandmother that lived with me died when I was 11, that my father that lived with me died when I was 13, that my mother died when I was 16, and she didn't see me graduate from high school. I have college degrees and have experience of traveling and doing other things. And the same thing is with the children that we are mentoring. We're mentoring them by example. They see us. And then they don't know who Coach Bradford is or Brother Bradford is until they sit down and we communicate. And when they start communicating with them, the first thing I recommend men to do is to listen to them. Do not talk at or to them and direct them. They're going to find their own path. I had to find my own path from age 16 to where I am now. And when I saw in Tyrone's little snippet verse like that, yeah, I too used to have an afro, but I don't, it's not there. But I still have a fairly declining brain that can remember how to treat other people. Okay, that's so important.
I love you just dropped a whole lot right there. It gave me something to think about because when you all were talking earlier, the first word that came to my mind that was like the common denominator was listening. Because really that's what it's about. If we just listen to the other and just hear where they're coming from, you can maybe understand why they're saying what they're saying. You don't have to agree. I think people think that if they listen, then you're either trying to change their mind or, you know, you're up to something, instead of just understanding that listening is all about just understanding a different perspective. And then we can have a conversation. And I think people are concerned about that because I remember having conversations and just sharing a little bit, because y'all know I'm transparent with my husband. I think at times he thought, because I always had something to say, because my mind is always going, but it was always like, well, I'm standing firm in what I'm saying. I was like, I'm not trying to change your mind, but I think that's where the pushback was coming from, because he thought I was trying to change his perspective. Whereas I'm trying to, you know, and it could be that at times I know younger, I love to debate. So I probably was like, well, you know, think about what you're saying. That might not make sense. But I also had to check myself and say, like we talked about, people are different. They're coming from different perspectives. Just for instance, with him, when you brought up, ironically, I don't even think we talked about this, but he lost his dad at 11. And that in itself is an experience that's going to drive how he communicates, how he feels about things. And I need to take that into consideration when I'm having those conversations, right? So I love what you're saying. It's making me think too. And it further enforces the power of shut up, which is all about listening. That's all it is. It's just giving other people a chance to say something and actually listen actively to hear what they're saying. Because you can tell when somebody's not really listening to you, they're just waiting their turn to have something to say. And generally what will happen is they'll repeat something that was already said because they weren't really listening. But Tyrone,
My apologies. My apologies for that.
No problem, man. We know how it is in Hollywood. Okay, we get it.
I'm not.
I was Halle Berry and Beyonce. Somebody.
I gotta get this Obama phone fixed.
So I got a question for you all. I wanted to ask you all a couple of questions. So when I was doing some research and doing my book and found out that there is an extreme difference between the amount of words that women use and men use. And generally speaking, it's like 20,000 words to 7,000 words. It's a really huge gap. And knowing that helped me in communicating with my husband. So a lot of times women are giving you, like I said, they're designing the whole picture for you. Tyrone will be back, I'm sure. They're designing the whole picture for you. But with men, what they say is, and I want to ask, is this true? They say that men talk to get things done, whereas women talk for emotional connection. Do you all think that's true?
For me, it's 100% true. Yeah, I'm a guy who really believes less is more. And part of the reason I feel that way is because the less I say, the more powerful I feel in being able to be more assertive in the things that I need to do and what to say. I've learned that if, for example, if you have watched people, if you've been in a meeting, if you notice if there's 10 people there, generally the same 10 people, people talk all the time. But the person you hear the least is the one that you hear the loudest.
That's true.
The one that speaks the less is the one you hear the loudest.
You kind of tune into, yeah, because you're not used to hearing the sound, so you kind of tune into it. That makes sense to me. And I do know that, even at work, I tell people that generally speaking, I think in meetings, if you've ever paid attention in meetings, usually it's lasting for 45 minutes, but there's been one idea that's been brought to the table and everybody just took a chance to explain it their way. So you're looking for that difference, which is usually that quiet person, because I used to use a lot of words. And I'm going to tell a funny real quick, and then Dan, I'm going to go to you. But when we went, my husband and I were in counseling and I was expressing myself. And the pastor said, do you say all of that when you telling him, what's on your mind? And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, I'm telling you right now that after the first couple of sentences, he really just kind of took it out.
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah.
And although that hurt my feelings at first, because I'm thinking I'm a great communicator, but that's what the power shut up is too, that I had to check myself and say, okay, Lisa, what are you going to do differently? Because now he's giving you the real information, which is that he tuned you out after a couple of sentences. So all that you're doing, now he's just irritated that you're still talking. So then I learned how to form my sentences in a different way so that I can get to it a lot quicker. And then he's open to responding to it. So, Coach, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay. You may have noticed I hesitated to go first because
I know you did.
it was by design that I think of the many organizations that I belong to that are co-ed. I have never been in one where women didn't outtalk the men 5-1. And I'm kind of hesitating to say it because I don't know who's listening. Some people take forever to get to the point, and I have this, when you get involved in a lot of organizations, and I'm in many, I hate that term. I want to piggyback. No, we've already said that. You're repeating it. This is not Animal Farm. Don't piggyback with what Tyrone just said. I'm not going to say the same thing over again.
Right.
But women do that. I think it's a natural thing. I'm all in favor of equality, but from women's suffrage and with the church now talking about a woman can't be a pastor, and all of these kinds of things, you have a right. women have a right to be concerned about where do I fit in society. Okay. And I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem that when you find out where you sit in, just say it and then move on. You know, it just takes a long time. And look who's talking. I mean, I'm rambling because I'm trying to be cautious of the words that I use.
No, I'm actually loving this because part of the reason that I thought you two would be great is because we're hearing things, you know, in real time. It's how you feel. And I think on some level, women, me included, have to learn to just receive the information. A lot of times we're ready to rebuke it, or, you know, refuse it, or whatever it is, instead of just receiving. What did you just hear him say? And once you get out of your feelings, and as I say with the power shut up, burn those petty files and put those egos aside and just listen to what's been said, and then take it in and figure out, what am I going to do with this information? Am I strong enough or big enough to say, okay, so let me take in what that was, and how am I going to move forward and do better? Or am I going to get my feelings and get mad about it? And now I'm talking even more because I want to just argue with you about what you said and how dare you and all of that kind of stuff. So I love this conversation. But I got another question for you. So is it true that men use language to inform, where women use it to enhance cooperation?
I think men use language to solidify a situation because we try to come to the point. I mean, we go straight to the jugular. Why did you open the door without asking me to come to the door with you when a stranger rang the doorbell? It's not that you handled it. You insulted me a little bit, that you should be safe in the environment that we live in today.
Okay.
Just because a person has on a uniform doesn't mean they're with the electrical water company. They could be the biggest criminal on earth.
True.
And I think that, and I'm probably speaking about Bruce Bradford right now, more so than 4 other men. But I think that we talk directly to the point, and women tend to build it up and preface it before getting to the real point.
Okay.
Okay.
I can receive.
I don't know if did I really answer your question?
No, you did.
Okay.
I can receive that, and I was smiling because we have had that very incident. Say something comes to the door, it's dark outside, but it's no big deal. So I go to the door, and then right over my shoulder, you know, is my husband saying, "Why didn't you tell me that the ring went off?" And I'm like, "Well, I was right here." And he was like, "No." And he just says it, so I know what he means, and I just say, "You good? You right? I'll let you know next time." But it's instead of taking it personally, like you trying to tell me what to do, which I think is what some women do, I took it as he's doing what he feels like he needs to do, and I need to let him do that.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. So I was smiling because you gave the very incident that has happened many times, where he gave the direct, "Why are you not letting me know?" Or I said, "I get it." When I say, "Oh no, it's no big deal, I get it," I say he'll say it another time, and then I know, put it down, and he'll get it.
But see, that's the L and F. That's the love and the forgiveness. If you love one another, you have to forgive one another. And you have to listen to them, because Freudian slips come out of everyone's mouth. I don't care who you are, public speakers, or anybody's going to say things. And, you know, those who are just looking for you to make a mistake, and they do that. But if they're looking for the mistake, that's because they don't have love in what you are attempting to do. It's just like with that little quote that I heard Denzel say, you know, if you have a dream, but you don't have a goal, you're just still dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
You're just dreaming. You have to find the goal is that I want the 2 disputants to respect one another, let the issue go if that were the case or was the case of such. And then you just let it go. So counseling is excellent. I believe that every human being on this earth should have counseling. I don't want to talk to somebody who's never been through counseling.
I agree. And I like
I agree too. I agree.
I'm gonna pass this over to you. I love that you said that, because one of the things that I hear, and actually in the beginning experience when I talked about counsel, was like, we don't need to do that. But we ended up going, but it was pushback initially, and from a lot of my friends. I think that that's an area where there's a struggle, because it's like, why do we want to bring a third party in? And I think he got it, but I do know that there are a lot of men out there that feel like we don't need to bring someone else into our business.
Right.
So I wanted to go, Tyrone, what are your thoughts about that? How you can help men to feel safe in those spaces? Because you do have to do some research and make sure you have the right person. But we did research the pastor that spoke with us was someone who had been married for 30 plus years and had been through everything we could have possibly put on the table. And she kept it real with both of us. So no one felt like, oh, you're going along with her versus him. And my husband actually liked her. He loved talking to her. So I was like, what? You didn't want to come. But because she was so real, right, about the conversations and the truth. And she checked me a couple of times. I'm sure that made him smile, but she checked me. But I knew when I went to counseling that I ain't got all the answers and I'm not doing everything right. So that helped us to know that we both had some learning to do.
One of the things that while most people won't say it, part of the reason why a lot of men have a bit of difficulty talking to their partner is because they believe it doesn't stay with them. It stays with their mom or their best friend, or you're telling their business somewhere. And that's difficult for people. They don't know whether what's said to you, or can they be vulnerable enough to know that it's okay. Many of us, particularly men in general, feel hostility toward other people when our partner has went and spoken something ill will with us. And though you've gotten by it, but then because you told your friend about our situation, they didn't. And a lot of times men they just would best say nothing, because that way that's a sense of vulnerability that they don't get. And so in my mind, one of the things in which I've always learned is that I've always told people, I won't tell you secrets. Whatever we talk about is us. Now, counseling is a whole different matter, and I totally agree, and I believe it's an important part of a relationship. There are things that you're not going to be able to do on your own. I believe that. But the one thing is that this person needs to be able to trust you for you. And the one thing that everybody thinks that the number one thing for me that needs to be intentional is peace. I need peace. And that's the one thing I'm more intentional on than anything else. In the world, I have to always watch the people I deal with, who's real, who isn't, who likes me for me, who wants to know who I know, who's going to be braggadocious about, what the things in which I do. I have to watch that all the time. And a lot of times men want to know that their personal business is their personal business and not sometimes their wife or girlfriend's best friend or their mother or friends and talking on a girl's night out. It's really difficult for that. It's hard.
That's a great point. That's good information right there. I think that's something that women need to kind of take a hold of and understand, that that's the problem, that they need to be able to trust that you don't take this outside of us. When you say it's us, even to the point, and I shared this with another friend that's married, and she said, oh, your husband does that too. But even when I take pictures, me being in social media, there's certain pictures that my husband will take, and he doesn't send them to me, because he's like, I don't want you to post those. So those are his pictures that he wants of me or whatever. So everything shouldn't belong to everybody. And I had to learn that, because part of what I do is, being out on social media, but I had to find that balance that made him comfortable for that very same reason, because everything is not supposed to, can I have this picture for me? And at first I was like, well, what do you mean? It's just, but then I got it. And I was like, he doesn't mind taking 5, but 1 or 2 of them are going to be his. So
look, just a footnote to that, to go with that. I'm going to let you know, when a man hears that, well, this is my best friend, we could talk about anything. The translation to a man is, that means you're talking about us.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
And
so, yeah. And it doesn't mean that, look, we all talk about things sometimes. It's okay. But the fact is, that means if you're talking about the good and the bad, that means that there's somebody who's already prejudged us without knowing anything. And that's not fair to you or to them or to me.
That's
And
a
that's
great,
what I think about.
yeah, that's a great point. Look, you all know I don't want to keep you past time. I know both of you all are busy. I would love to. This is part one of many parts to come. I am hoping that you all will come back because I still have more questions that I want to ask you all. So please, I'm hoping to be able to reach out to you all and bring you back and bring more men into the room. We can hold, I think, 10 people in this room and have some real conversations. This has been amazing. But before we go, I wanted you all to both share what you've been working on, your projects, and what's going on in your life, because I know both of you all are working on some amazing things. So, Dad, I'm gonna start with you. What you got going on? Because I think it's something that you just did.
Oh, well, I'm back in competitive swimming, okay? I have a midlife crisis. And like I said, my faith is strong that God gave me swimming ability way back when. And that's how I got a swimming scholarship to Tennessee State University. And I came home with 2 degrees and a wife for 52 years and 6 months, 4 children and 7 grandchildren. And I'm still teaching swimming. And I had a 52-year gap in competitive swimming. Now I'm swimming in the seniors age group appropriately and enjoying it. And the thing is that I tell my grandson that graduated from A&T this year, I said, you wouldn't be here if God didn't give me swimming skills, if I didn't follow that. He didn't even let my parents see me graduate from high school. I have no loss of love for that. I have more surrogate mothers and fathers and children just like you are my daughter. You know, you're not just my friend, because you know that that's a word that has a meaning. It means that you can come to me and you better come to me as opposed to not come to me. Okay.
That's right.
So I'm working with a group, and I ended on this, and I hope I'm not advertising. It's a group called the 13th Man. It is outstanding.
Yes, they have been on the show, so please do.
Yeah, you know, and I'm a board member with them, and I've been with them doing workshops with them. It is just incredibly wonderful feeling because and don't take this wrong, but I told you when my father passed, that when I was 13, I didn't have a particular role model as to what a dad did. I had coaches and teachers and uncles that did this, but they were not the permanent fixture like oxygen is in my body. So then when I brought my own children into this world, I had to do the best that I could do. But I always told them, you can correct me, but better correct me, pray for me first. Then correct me, because you may not know why I'm doing what I'm doing, that in the end, it will come to fruition that it makes sense. And, you know, just an example, like right now, I have grandchildren that can't write cursive because they don't teach it anymore. So you can't read it. And then you're going to be lost. And that's not an art that we should let go. Something like that. That's just one example. And for sake of time, I'm going to leave it at that, because curiosity killed the cat. I want you to get me back, okay?
Yes, you have to come back. And I just wanted to let you all know that I swam when I was at Woodson, 11th and 12th grade. Right. I was told I was going to be on the team. But I learned so much, and my whole family actually went through Woodson and was on the swimming team. So it was just a thing that we did. But I learned to swim at HD Woodson as a kid. But what you did for me in life, being my coach, and then you were a part of the family. You knew my great uncle was the assistant coach with you. Instilled something in me that I carry to this day. So I'm forever grateful. And I just pray that other people have that opportunity, and what you do for all of this, and I'm saying students, because we're all grown now with our families, but if you all were to see the love that's shown to him every homecoming, because of the impact you had, it's so important to me that people realize that you might not get it at home, but there's somebody that's in your life, whether it's a teacher, a coach, or whatever, that is there for you. And without you, this would have been different. So I thank you. As always, you have always been a huge support of mine. And I appreciate you and thank you. And yes, you got to come back. No doubt about it. And because you were a coach and a teacher, and my son is actually a physical education teacher in Oxon Hill, Maryland. So all of that I poured into my children. So I thank you, Tyrone. And I told you all, we met on doing a co-author book with the amazing Sharon. But from there, Tyrone has been just a wonderful blessing to the show. And as a friend, he makes us laugh. But tell us what you got going on. Allow.
Well, let me, one of the things I do want to say for everyone that's on here who's listening and watching tonight, every single person needs to understand that all of us, parents, children, teachers, have had some sense of trauma in their life. Take that into consideration before you pass judgment on anyone. I really think that's really important, because we believe that somehow or another they're supposed to know everything when you don't recognize that they've had just as many issues perhaps as you have.
Right.
I think that's fairly important. I've been recently inducted into the California Music Hall of Fame along with my mentor Casey Kasem. That was a big thrill for me. And things are going really well. My television show, based on my #1 book from Amazon called The 4 Seasons of R&B, is going to be a television series, and that's what I've been working on as well. Next couple of weeks, BET Experience, I'm receiving an award for being an R&B historian, and the Enthroned Honors as well the next day as a Lifetime Achievement Award. So I'm extremely blessed and grateful. I feel like I'm living someone else's life, and I am so forever grateful of being able to just simply to show love and be treated with love and respect, and it means more to me than you can ever imagine. I'm extremely humbled by where I am in my life at this time.
I thank you, but look, these are gems, you all, and I'm hoping to bring them back and we can continue this conversation. I see this as a huge series for the men to tune in. So if you heard something you liked, if you have other things you want to talk about, if you'd like to join them and be a part of the show, I really want to plan this intentionally and start having these conversations and open up the lines of communication. This is just, I think it's important. And you all have poured into people so much, and we need to continue that. We need you all. And for the record, we won't be here for Father's Day. This is the last show of the Power Shut Up podcast season 1, but we wanted to make sure we say Happy Father's Day to all of you all. We appreciate you. You matter. We hear you. We're listening. I can't speak for everybody, but I know over here at the Power Shut Up podcast, me and my team and my crew and my family, we adore the men in our family, and we want to pour into you all as you have to us. So we celebrate you, and we're going to continue to do this and celebrate you, not just for Father's Day and for June, but I think every month we need to come back to the table and have more conversations. And I want you all to give me ideas on what we can talk about. Dad and Tyrone, I know your schedules can be busy. I want to bring the mentoring group back, Dad, because it was about the young men. And I'm a part of a young women's mentoring group. But Tyrone, I know you're working with the youth as well. I think even college level, I believe. So let's do it. If you have some people that you want to bring on with you, young people alike, let's bring them back and have a conversation. So thank you all for continuing to tune in and support the Power Shut Up for season 1. We look forward to seeing you in the fall with some more surprises for season 2. So did y'all have any parting words before we say goodnight?
I do. Just real quickly, I just want to say to your dad, you are an absolute class act, sir. I salute you, and you are someone I'm absolutely honored to being able to meet today. I want to thank you for the pleasure of your time of being able to meet you today. It means a lot.
It goes both ways, sir. I heard a lot about you, so I feel like I've known you longer than this hour that we've shared together, because Lisa speaks highly of you. And don't think I didn't do research. I looked you up, okay?
They all do. They all do.
You know, you have no privacy in this world anymore right now. Like, I saw you on Facebook, and I didn't know you were this and that and all that kind of stuff. So it's more things that people know about us than we really share, because the Bible says, let another man praise you. So you sometimes, if you don't ask, you don't know. But this has been beautiful, okay?
Absolutely, and I'm bringing you all back together. So more to come. And this is how it's done. Thank you all so much for closing out season 1 for me. I appreciate and love you both. And we will see you all in the fall. So have a good one and enjoy. Happy Father's Day.
All right, Tyrone, Lisa will give you my number if you ever get in touch with me. Please don't give it to those women out there, okay? Thank you.
I'm giving it to Hallie right away. I'm gonna let her know. Let her know you looking for her. Take her out to some White Castle. I know you type. I know what you like.
Good night,
Bingo.
everybody.
All right, good night. Thank you.